We kick off the broadcast with the Philippines logging its fourth case of the Omicron variant. The 38-year-old female arrived from the United States on December 10 and only tested positive for COVID-19 on the 14th. She was released from a facility-based quarantine after showing no symptoms on the 10th day of isolation. She's now under home quarantine.
That development comes as Metro Manila sees a bump up in COVID infections this holiday season. The percentage of those testing positive for COVID-19 in NCR has doubled to 1.5%. 1 week growth rate has also surged by a half. The health department attributes the uptick to increased mobility during the holidays. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Despite the spike in infections over the holidays, the health department is still not sounding the alarm.
But experts are already projecting a possible new surge in COVID cases by month end, especially now that a fourth Omicron case has been detected. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the big story.
Nobody wants to be a Grinch that stole Christmas, but health officials are noting with increasing concern the uptick in COVID-19 cases during the holiday season. In Metro Manila alone, the positivity rate or the percentage of those who tested positive for COVID-19 has already doubled in just 1 week, from 0.7 to 1.5%. 1 week growth rate in the National Capital Region has also increased by 49%.
It's not significant enough yet, but it is an alarm. It is a warning for all of us that cases might start to increase.
Given the lag time of reporting and the 1 week incubation period of the virus, the uptick don't even reflect the increased activities of the actual week of the Christmas. In fact, infectious diseases expert Dr. Ron Solante says, we may expect to see a new surge by the end of January.
It may not be as bad as that what we have experienced last March or August, because a lot already has been vaccinated.
Local experts agree that it's just a matter of time before an Omicron-driven surge happens, especially since the DOH reported the country's fourth Omicron case. A 38-year-old female who is a returning overseas Filipino from the United States was quarantined upon arrival on December 10 and turned positive on December 15.
Sa ngayon, ang atin pa rin pong natatala na Omicron case ay 4, galing pa rin po sa labas.
On December 24, she was discharged as an asymptomatic and has since been under home quarantine.
Yung detection natin sa sequencing for this fourth case natin ng Omicron came after when the individual was discharged already.
But Solante said, since the Omicron variant is 3 to 5 times more transmissible than the Delta variant, it is best to take extra measures in dealing with these cases.
Dapat sana doon sila sa institutionalized quarantine facility rather than just be at home. Kasi hindi mo naman ma-monitor kung sinong pumapasok o sino nang nahawaan ito.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Is another surge really in the offing, and will it be as bad as the Delta-driven surge this year? That big question and more with infectious disease expert Dr. Ron Solante. Dr. Solante, welcome to The Big Story. Maligayang Pasko po.
Hi, Robbie. Good evening and Merry Christmas.
Nga pa. Merry po ba? I mean, ngayon, binabantayan natin yung Omicron. I think people had their reunions. They allowed themselves to celebrate Christmas. But as we look at this fourth case, how should people be looking at the coming 2022?
Well, it's alarming because we already have the fourth case. And you know how transmissible Omicron variant is. And as I've said, it's just a matter of time that we will be having another surge of cases of COVID-19. But the question, Robbie, will this be an Omicron-driven surge or will this be a Delta-driven surge? Because if it's Delta, then when most of us are already vaccinated, then that's quite controllable and expected that it may not really be giving us a problem in terms of healthcare facility utilization. But if it's an Omicron variant, which is really highly transmissible, even if the character of this virus can only cause mild type of disease, then the scenario of having more cases will still be a threat to our healthcare utilization. So those are the two important factors where will be the surge be. Could be an Omicron or a Delta surge.
Isa ngayon po, it's still predominantly Delta, we would presume. But talk to us also about yung pagtaas ng positivity rate. Ano po ibig sabihin nito?
Expected to siya dahil holidays ngayon, no? Ang daming pagtitipon, ang daming gatherings. And in fact, there are also reports na maski sa mga vaccinated, merong nagkaka-infection na rin because of the impact of these gatherings. No? So I would say this is a normal increase in the number of cases. But if we look at and if we will be waiting, no, we have to monitor the cases. If next week and the next week after, before the end or the first week of January, if there will be doubling of the current 0.7, then that's an alarming number of cases because I would say this is really be important for us if there will be doubling of the current reproduction number.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Dr. Solante. That was infectious disease expert Dr. Rontjean Solante. In order to find out if cases have risen, you may have to go to the Health Department's COVID tracker to get updates. Starting January 1st, the agency will cease from releasing daily case bulletins. You heard that right. No more separate social media cards and files showing COVID infections daily. Instead, you can visit the DOH tracker on their website. For today, COVID cases have risen by 318. The majority of that comes from backlogs. Total infections is now at 2.8 million with 9,000 active cases. 11 more deaths were reported today, while 255 were reported to have recovered.
These are the other big stories tonight. The death toll from Typhoon Odette continues to swell. Fatalities are inching closer to the 400 mark. The Metro Manila Film Festival's return to cinemas since the pandemic was anything but festive. And some blame COVID worries for the low ticket sales, while others pin the blame on the film lineup. And 2 Pinoy dishes made it to the list of the 100 best dishes in the world. Find out how sisig and adobo fared in the rankings after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. With only one hospital, giving medical aid post-Typhoon Odette has been a nightmare in Siargao.
Fortunately, reinforcement has come in the way of the converted BRP Ang Pangulo. Marian Enriquez has this report.
Due to the onslaught of Typhoon Odette, many residents in Siargao had to be hospitalized. The problem is, the island only has one hospital, but reinforcement has arrived. The presidential ship BRP Ang Pangulo has been transformed into a floating hospital to serve Odette-affected residents. The ship arrived last week, and since then, boats carrying residents in need of medical assistance have kept coming. Gemma, who lives in Barangay Hubang, suffered a deep wound in her leg during Typhoon Odette.
Hindi ko alam kung nasugatan ako ng paa ko. Hindi ko alam. Pagkatapos, ang daming dugo.
Most of the patients brought to the vessel sustained injuries during the typhoon's onslaught. There are 10 hospital beds in the ship. One of those admitted is 17-year-old RG, who is suffering from diarrhea.
Yung LBM ko po, pang 5 days na po ngayon. Bale, sa tubig po. Kasi yung tubig namin galing sa bukid. Di po namin alam kung may mga patay na mga hayop po doon. Kaya nagkakakos po kami ng LBM.
Aside from medical services, affected Siargao residents were also placed under psychological first aid service.
Meron kaming dalawang staff dito, psychologist and psychometrician, kung saan meron silang mga kinukumusta ang bawat mga tao na pati especially yung mga bata na very traumatic sa kanila.
The BRP Ang Pangulo crew also provides free haircut services and conducted a feeding program in the island. For those working in the ship, they are more than happy to help out those in need.
Very privileged kami na nandito, na kami mismo ang nakakatulong sa ating mga kababayan. Hindi namin iniisip ang break. Ang sa amin makatulong. Ang aming makatulong sa ating mga kababayan, lalo na kung sa mga nangyari sa kanila.
For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
The number of casualties due to Typhoon Odette continue to rise. In the latest tally of the NDRRMC, total fatalities have now reached 389. Those injured from the onslaught have risen to 1,146, while still more than 60 are missing. More than 1 million families, or 4.2 million Filipinos, have been affected. Damage to infrastructure, meanwhile, is estimated to be at a staggering 16.7 billion pesos. The agricultural sector also lost around 5.3 billion pesos. To respond to the massive destruction, the government is looking to release 6 billion pesos before we cap off the year. That will form part of the 10 billion pesos that President Duterte has allotted for typhoon response. According to Acting Budget Secretary Tina Canda, from the 6 billion of the contingent fund, 2 billion pesos have been released since Friday. 4 billion will be sourced from the Quick Response Fund before 2021 ends. Canda adds the other 4 billion will be from the 2022 national budget, pending President Duterte's signing of the spending plan.
After 2 years of missing cinema houses, the Metro Manila Film Festival is now back in theaters. But unlike the pre-pandemic experience, there were no lines in the movie houses. And Camille Samonte has a story.
The Metro Manila Film Festival had a rough start. There are almost no lines in this Makati Mall's movie house. For Nanay Fe and her grandchild, it's a tradition. But this year seemed to lack movies for kids.
Parang hindi sa kanya suit sa kanya yung mga palabas.
So hindi na po kayo manonood?
Hindi. Maglalaro na lang daw siya sa time zone.
Many are also looking for more family-friendly flicks.
Mga fantasy, mga adventure, di ba? Magical, mga ganun. So okay kasi yung ganun. Mag-enjoy kasi mga bata talaga.
The organizer acknowledged the lack of family genre films but says the pandemic made it hard to produce films.
The reality is walang na-shoot. Yun yung context nun. Walang nasubmit na mga entries nila dahil hindi sila nakapag-shoot. Yung reality ng market kasi kung pambata to, yung mga hindi bakunadong mga bata hindi makakapasok sa sinehan.
Last year, some films were pirated after the festival was conducted virtually. The MMDA still attributes the low viewer turnout to the COVID scare.
Naninibago pa ang tao dahil parang from almost 2 years na nasa bahay ka, pero at least nakakaroon ng tiwala sa ating sinihan. May mga nanonood na. Ito yung magandang panimula na rin.
It's the same story in this mall in Mandaluyong City. Only 8 of 12 cinemas were reopened with capacity capped at 30%. Along with social distancing measures, food and beverages are also prohibited inside the theater. Despite this, some are still excited to watch on the big screen.
Hindi mo pa-feel pag online, dapat ganito siya talaga sinehan.
Kaya nung buwan na mag-pandemic, ganoon na kami hindi nakakapanood. So sabi natin, sige tayo manood tayo. Okay. Mukhang okay naman. Hindi pa siguro, kailangan lang mag-ingat.
Makatulong sa mga filmmakers na naghirap para makapag-produce sila ng mga films.
The MMFF management is hoping for more people to go back to cinema houses.
So every time you buy a ticket now, isipin na rin lang natin, hindi lang yung pagsuporta natin sa pelikulang Pilipino, isipin natin yung mga nawalan ng trabaho.
The MMFF runs until January 7, 2022. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Time for another quick break. When we return, South Africa and the rest of the world are mourning the death of anti-apartheid icon and Anglican priest Desmond Tutu. After 17 years, Armi Millare departs from Up Dharma Down to embark on a solo career. And find out what made adobo and sisig as two of the world's top 100 dishes in 2021. More details after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Christmas might have been different for many Odette hit areas, but one thing remains, the strong showing of faith.
In Cebu, residents still flock to churches, even those which were heavily damaged by the typhoon. Mon Gualvez has this report.
From the Magellan's Cross up to the row of votive candles inside the church's compound, Cebuanos remain deep in prayer after Typhoon Odette battered the province.
They've been weathered by the typhoon, but Cebuanos still flock churches and make sure they hear Mass, just like here in Basilica Minore del Santo Niño in Cebu. It just proved that Cebuanos have still known for their deep faith and devotion to Señor Santo Niño.
Nalangin po na maka-recover agad kasi sa hirap ng panahon ngayon, kailangan po natin lumaban para po sa kinabukasan ng pamilya po. Blessing pa rin sa pamilya ko kasi walang nangyari.
Ang Panginoon din natin kalimutan sa mga araw-araw. Every time magdasal tayo para manalangin. Kahit may bagyo, tatayo pa rin ang taga Cebuano.
Damaged by the typhoon, Basilica Minore del Santo Niño was supposed to close down, but the faithful demanded that church doors remain open.
Marami ng tao na pumipila sa labas na to visit Santo Niño, then actually nag-close kami for half day, but they are insisting because to give thanks kay Señor Santo Niño.
But others had different intentions. The church, now being powered by generator sets, became a free charging station for some residents.
It's a way of helping each other para ma-communicate naman ng mga kapatid natin sa kanilang mga family, because Christmas is about family. So para sa amin, pinaka-importante yung communication right now.
Speaking of keeping in touch with family during the holidays, some Cebuanos have been lining up for days in despair in Cebu, hoping to get a ride. To somehow ease the burden of waiting, the Alagang Kapatid Foundation, Ronald McDonald House of Charities, and the Eastern Visayas Naval Reserve Command handed them sandwiches and bottles of water.
Binibigay namin to doon sa mga na-stranded at saka nakapila sa pier. And para kasi hindi na sila makaalis eh. Ni pag-ihi, sabi nga lang, hindi kami makaalis sir eh. So baka maagawan sa pila. So binibigay namin sa kanila, natutulog na sila doon, binibigay tubig.
For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
We are all witness and testament to how we as a people can foster the bayanihan spirit to help our kababayan still reeling from the onslaught of Typhoon Odette. Now is the best time to help in whatever way we can. Let's make them feel the spirit of bayanihan. You can give through the bank account details being flashed on your screen. You can also donate through the PayMaya app. If you still have not done so, download the app, then use it to scan the QR code on your screens. You could, of course, also take a picture of the QR code now and then scan it on the app later. And for Smart and TNT subscribers, you can give donations by texting donate space the amount you want to give and send it to 3456.
The Commission on Elections is set to conduct a nationwide mock elections on Wednesday. The Comelec said this will allow them to see the use of the full automated election system. The mock election will be held in 34 barangays from NCR as well as provinces across the country. Meanwhile, the poll body also announced that it's aiming to release the official list of 2022 election candidates on January 7. Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez said they expect to resolve cases on cancellation of COCs and on nuisance candidates before the target date.
And here are other stories from around the globe. South African priest and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Desmond Tutu died on Sunday. He was 90 years old. Known for being a leader against white minority rule in South Africa, Tutu gained respect and recognition around the world. Many national leaders and personalities gave tribute to the South African hero. That would include former U.S. President Barack Obama, U.S. leaders Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and His Holiness Pope Francis. Desmond Tutu will lie in state in Cape Town until Friday before his funeral service.
Following their first in-person concerts in the U.S. since the pandemic began, two more members of K-pop sensation BTS, RM and Jin, have tested positive for COVID-19. This came a day after Big Hit Music announced that the group's lead rapper, Suga, got the virus. All three are vaccinated and are currently recovering. Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home has reached $1 billion at the global box office. This is the first movie to reach the milestone this pandemic. Proving that the film has been a phenomenon, fans have flocked to the theaters dressed as the superhero. Spider-Man's release in the Philippines is on January 8. Sad news for OPM fans. Up Dharma Downer UDD's lead singer Armi Millare bids adieu to the band after 17 years. In her statement, Armi said that UDD has remained her longest relationship. She also wished the best for her former bandmates and crew. Despite this, the remaining members will continue to make music under the record label Terno Recordings. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
More and more Filipino dishes are being recognized internationally. We are all for that.
Recently, international food database Taste Atlas included 2 Filipino dishes in their annual top 100 best dishes in the world. Ano ba yung dalawang dish na yan? Adobo at sisig. Adobo, the salty sour meat staple, placed 81st on the list and was described as the country's closest thing to a national dish.
Sisig, of course, the pollutant favorite, meanwhile ranked 72nd. It was described by Taste Atlas as an early remedy for nausea and hangovers because of its sour flavor. Whether you're out dining with family or partying with friends, these two will always be a Filipino staple.
Anong klaseng adobo kaya yun?
Ewan ko, pero sa totoo lang, national dish, team sinigang ako eh.
Oo.
Team sinigang ako.
Pero alam mo, internationally, ako rin galing ako sa international, huwag kang mag-alala, partner. Wala naman ako inuwing Omicron. Sure na yun.
Buti naman. And we're glad to see you safe. And finally, I get to say welcome back.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Belated. We have 1 week left to 2021, and let's make the most out of it. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.